Hey everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of the Horns of Nimon, the fifth and the unintended final story of the 17th season of classic Doctor Who, starring Tom Baker as the fourth Doctor. The Horns of Nimon is the 108th story overall. It's 4 parts long and it's written by Anthony Red. So Horns of Nimon is also, as I mentioned before, the last story to air in the 1970s and the first story to air in the 1980s. So part 1 and 2 aired during the Christmas/New Year's Eve period of 1979, and the last 2 parts pretty much aired on around the New Year's at the first couple of weeks of 1980. And this is also the last televised story that Graham Williams produces, as Shada pretty much went unaired, as filming was incomplete due to the BBC strikes. This is also the last televised story to use the 1967 theme tune and the last to use the Doctor Who Demon logo, which has been used since 1973. So the plot of the Horns of Nimon is as follows. When the TARDIS collides with a spaceship en route to the planet Skonos, the Doctor, Romana, and K9 soon uncover the horrific truth about its cargo. The ship is carrying young sacrifices for a powerful horned creature called the Nimon. But why is the creature so desperate for the delivery, and what other dangers await the time travelers? All will be revealed at the center of the labyrinth power complex on Skonos. So that is the plot of Horns of Nimon. So the Horns of Nimon is a notoriously bad story, but to be honest, I enjoyed every single bit, almost every single bit of the story. But it's not without its faults, however. I mean, it's a good story. I think it's quite enjoyable, but I don't think it deserves some of the hate it gets. The production I thought was quite good. Sets were basic, but still effective and worked for the story. I did like the set of Skonos, which looked very up and running and clean in comparison to Krynon, on the planet where the Nimons were staying at, because they pretty much destroyed every single life on that planet, causing it to look so derelict and decrepit. I did like the models of the ship flying in space. I thought it was quite good for its time. The script was quite good, very comedic lines and comedic moments, and the direction by Keenan McBain was quite good. Not the best, but still quite passable. The plot was quite good and it was quite easy to understand, as the Horns of Nimon was based on the Greek myth Theseus and the Minotaur. And some of the names in the story are basically anagrams from the myths, like Seth was Theseus, the Nimons were Minos, so I think the Minotaurs or something like that, and and Corinth was Krynoff. And just like Underworld, from season 15, the Doctor actually makes reference to where the plot actually is inspired from. And the mention comes from when the Doctor was telling Ramada he was glad that he told the people that were going back to the young people that were going back to Aneth to paint the ship white, because the last time it caused a bit of a problem, or a hoo-ha in the Doctor's words, because in the myth, Theseus forgot to paint his flag white when he returned to the planet, because he was told by his father to paint his flag white to indicate the fact that he's alive. But he forgot to paint the flag white, and the father saw the flag, and I think he was quite distressed and pretty much killed himself, I think. And the Nimons, I think it was pretty obvious that the Nimons were basically based on the Minotaurs themselves, because they looked very much like a Minotaur, big horns and looked very tall. Even though the Nimons in this story, they just pretty much wore cloth under their waist and like platform boots, like very tall platform boots, which look ridiculous by the way. And there was also a lot of comedy and very hammy acting in the story, which I did find funny, but I did think went a bit overboard just a little bit. And a good chunk of the hamminess actually comes from Lala Ward, which I'll get into that a bit later. I also liked how Nimons were pretending to be gods for the people of Skonos, and they're pretty much making sacrifices for them. But in actual fact, they're pretty much preparing to raid Skonos and kill everyone in Skonos, so they can pretty much move into Skonos. It was very good in a manipulative way, so to speak. There were some memorable moments, but not as memorable as other moments in the stories of the season. But I did like the scene where the Doctor was trying to switch HA Sonic Screwdriver for a modern Sonic Screwdriver, which Romana quickly noticed. The cliffhangers were quite good, especially the part 1 cliffhanger when the Doctor thought he was going to get destroyed inside the TARDIS of K9, and he pretty much hugged K9 as if they were literally just as if they were going to get destroyed at the instant. It was pretty much at the instant, because they pretty much had like a few couple of seconds left. And the part 2 cliffhanger was quite good as well. Well, because this is when Nimon killed the co-pilot and turned its attention towards Ramon and the other sacrifices. And on to the performances, which I thought was quite hammy and pantomime, but random, yes, but I did think it pretty much worked for the story, to be honest. Like Tom Baker, I thought he was great, and he definitely turned the comedy up to 11, and such as the part where just playing around with the TARDIS, and the thing pretty much the TARDIS malfunctions, and we have all these like comedic sound effects playing to acknowledge the fact that the TARDIS has gone wrong, and the Doctor was like, "That's very odd." I thought that was quite funny. And I did like how he acted in the part one cliffhanger and how he tried to switch his son and screwdriver with Romana's, but she pretty much noticed. His chemistry with Lala Ward was unsure in the story, and I liked how their chemistry pretty much complements one another and shows strong these two, how strong these two are as a duo. Along with Kanan as well, they pretty much seem like a family of some sorts. And as I said before, obviously they complement each other because Romana's like the younger, more competent version of the Doctor, but she lacks the experience that the Doctor has, and the Doctor being very scatterbrained and very all over the place, but he has the experience and pretty much uses that to teach Romana. And we see a lot of it in this. We saw a lot of it in this season and the Key to Time, which I pretty much like. Lala Ward was fun to watch, and I was surprised how hammy she was. And she does like hammy pantomime acting quite well because she does have moments where she raises her voice and stands up to villains and stuff like that. That was very Doctor like, and I liked how this story pretty much treats Romana as another Doctor. She's pretty much dressed like the Doctor. She has her own sonic screwdriver. She stands up to villains in a very theatrical way, of course. And I did like how she pretty much went back to the co-pilot and demanded that they go back to rescue the Doctor. But obviously that attempt failed, and she was pretty much locked with the prisoners. I did like how she was actually talking to the prisoners and the sacrifices from air for the sacrificing of the trying to like get to know them and what was going on. But I did like how she pretty much forgets her sonic screwdriver in the control room, which pretty much explains the inexperience Romana has in comparison to the Doctor. Kanan was used well, though not as well as other stories in this season. He's pretty much left in the TARDIS for some of the story, and he is actually called out, but then he's pretty much taken to Sodid's lab. But he does aid the Doctor, Romana, Tika, Seth, and the other sacrifices from escaping from the labyrinth where they fell into, and how they pretty much went back to the main Skonos room. I did find out how funny what Kanan was when he pretty much demanded Sorek to put him down from the table where he was placed upon, and by showing him his power, by showing Kanan, but he showed Kanan showed Sorek his power, and Sorek was quite scared. And I must say, David Briley's Kanan was quite sassy in comparison to John Lisa, and we've seen Kanan to be quite sassy in this season, and that was quite fun. So the sidecars, I think they did a alright job, so to speak. First off, we had Seth. He was one of the sacrifices from Erev that was meant to be sent to Skonos. He was a runaway prince, and he pretty much lied. I think he lied about his heritage because he was scared that they will turn him back. So I think he was adopted. So his girlfriend slash number one fan Tekka aided the Doctor Romana to defeat Nimon. I thought he was and of course Sodid as well. I think he was a bit of a complex character. He basically felt as he was overhyped by Tika, right? She was saying that he was going to be the one that would stop Nimon and stop Sodid and stuff like that. I do think he had like a sense of an imposter syndrome, but I do think the story could have exploded just a little bit. He does kill Sodid, which was quite cool. Then Tika, another Anethian sacrifice, and she had a bit of a romance with Seth, and she was pretty much his motivator, his number one stand, trying to like motivate him to try and like stop Nimon and Sodid. I do wish there was a scene where she realized that Seth wasn't who he was made out to be, because Seth was quite reluctant in doing things, and Tika was pretty much egging him on. Although it wasn't really his fault because she was one that pretty much put him in that position. And then we had the co-pilot. He, along with another pilot, was responsible for delivering the sacrifices to Skonos, but the main pilot died. I think it was because when the TARDIS crashed into the ship. Yep. So I think he pretty much called the sacrifices weaklings come for some very odd reason. And he was killed in the end of part 2 by a Nimon. And then we had Sorak, the captain of the Skonos military. He was pretty much Sodid's right-hand man, but then he started to become skeptical of Skonos, which obviously Sodid dismissed. And after Sodid was killed, he pretty much became the leader of Skonos. And finally, we have the Sezum. He was a Krinoth native who helped the Klinons to help them. Sorry, he was a Krinoth native that helped the Nimons enter Krinoth, but then he didn't know that he thought the Nimons were going to be peaceful, but obviously he didn't know that the Nimons were pretty much going to pretty much destroy the home planet. He obviously regretted, but he gives Romana some information about what the Nimons and what they tend to do to Skonos when she accidentally arrived on Krinoth, and he gave her a mineral that would pretty much harm the Nimons. He was a very important character that helped with the pretty much brought upon the story's climax, but he died in part 4 because he was killed by a Nimon. So I think the side casts, they were quite good, and they pretty much all had a good part to play in the story. And our villains. First off, we had Soldeed. He was a scientist, well, the last surviving scientist of Skonos, and he was pretty much the leader of Skonos. He was pretty much controlled by Nimon by offering to take the sacrifices to Nimon to make Skonos great. And he also wanted a crystal called Hermethysite for the power source for the sacrifices. He treated the Nimon as if he was like a god, and when he discovered that the Nimons were lying to him, but when he saw multiple Nimons, I think he saw like 2, 3, he pretty much went mad and he tried to stop what the Doctor was doing when the Doctor was trying to prevent the Nimons from coming to the black hole. He was killed by a Sith, and I thought he was an alright villain. He was very theatrical, but I think the actor played him quite well. He was very, very theatrical and hammy. And of course he had the Nimons. They were parasitic humanoids that operated by invading home planets and pretty much setting up home there by pretty much wiping out the planet's population until there was no, and they pretty much stayed on that planet until there was no use for it. They did the same to Krinoth, but then as soon as they saw Skonoff, they pretty much wanted to do the same to Skonoff, and the chosen leader from the Nimon side was pretty much a god to the Skonos, the people of Skonos, because the Nimon looked very tall, so obviously they decided to worship them. And then the Nimon pretty much promised Soldeed power to make Skonos a great nation, but this was a lie. I think they were good villains. They were written very well, and I think how they pretty much manipulated Soldeed was quite good. But I do think, as I said before, they looked very ridiculous with their horns, wearing some sort of bodysuit and platform heels underneath. That was just. I mean, if they decided, I don't know. They could have did what they did with. They could have had the Nimons like. I think the Minotaur appeared in the Time Monster. They could have used that for the story, but I don't know. So I think the fault of the story. I do think the comedy was a bit too much. Even though I have said I did admire how comedic it was, but I do think it went a bit too far, especially the bit in the TARDIS where the Doctor pretty much accidentally caused a malfunction, and all these comedic sounds were playing. They did find it a bit too silly, and but I did like Tom Baker's delivery, but I think the scene itself was a bit silly. The story did drag a little bit. I think this is around part 2, and I think my final issue is the story once again. The story pretty much overlooks a serious issue that was mentioned in the story, and it was overlooked because of the comedy. And that issue was pretty much what the Nimons were doing was basically genocide, by ransacking planets and killing everyone on that planet to set a name for them. So that was pretty much genocide, and they pretty much stayed on that planet until they found another suitable planet. I do feel the writers could have taken this bit seriously, but I think this is another fault of Douglas Adams. I think obviously he's a comedy writer. He introduced certain aspects into his plots, but he pretty much overlooked them in favor for more comedy and stuff. And I do this is the same issue that the Pirate Planet had, once again, with genocide, because I think the main villain was pretty much plundering planets and destroying them at the same time, pretty much so she can look younger. And then this is what the Nimons were doing. They were pretty much destroying the home planet, destroying planets, so they can pretty much set home there. And they could have done more to mention this issue, but hey, what they were future I guess. So to conclude, I think the Horns of Nimon is a very charming story, full of humor. One can't really simply resist from laughing, given a slight chuckle, but I do think the comedy went a bit overboard, so I gave Horns of Nimon a 7 out of 10. In other circumstances, I'd have ended the season 17 and would have gone into to Oli ranks, but I will actually be doing the review of Shada, which was the intended season 17 finale, and because it's actually been completed in an animated form. Well, because it's filled in some of the animated bit, the missing bits with, well, not missing bits of the unfilmed bits of animation. So yeah. So that was a short of my next review. Thanks for watching this review. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and watch my other reviews, and let me know what you think of Horns of Nimon. Until then, see you later.